interested so much in make and model as the specific purpose to which it's allocated.
It's a car that's assigned a homicide unit. We have a homicide kit in the trunk.
Now, may we learn what a homicide kit consists of? I assume you've been through them more than once.
From the beginning,
Yes.
in the bottom of the homicide kit, you have usually coveralls, pliers, ropes, gloves, sometimes very
kind of
high-powered flashlights.
What kind of gloves, Detective?
Oh, you'd have like work gloves that you would use to maybe climb down a rope. If you're going into a ravine or some inaccessible area, you have to get down to a scene.
You also have rubber gloves?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We saw, well, did you see Detective Lang at any time that day with some rubber gloves on?
I did not know.
All right, continue.
You'd have rulers, tape measures, any necessary reports, plastic bags, envelopes, writing utensils, grease pencils, rulers, compass.
Plastic bags in varying sizes, perhaps?
Yes,
Intended for the collection of evidence, should any be found?
yes.
Okay. Anything else of significance in the standard LAPD homicide kit?
There's quite a few items, but I'm sure I'm leaving out several. But
All right, but these are all tools that might be useful at the scene of a given homicide.
yes,
Did you and Detective Phillips discuss, without going into the conversation, just yes or no, the possible significance of this particular homicide as it might affect the public and the media?
you're talking about the media?
Yeah.
I don't recall discussing that with Detective Phillips.
So no mention of that was made as you were meeting at the West Los Angeles Police Station and while you were getting into the homicide-equipped vehicle.
Not that I recall.
And was he driving?
Yes, he was.
It is a very short distance from there to the intersection of Bundy and Dorothy, is it not?
Yes, sir.
And do you agree that your arrival time, I assume you do because of your own notes, was 2:10 a.m.,
Yes, I do.
and that you and Phillips arrived simultaneously?
Yes.
All right. Now, to your knowledge, you were the first detective on the scene. You too.
Yes, both Detective Phillips and myself.
Did you learn that Sergeant Rossi had been there since early on?
I didn't-
Sometime before you.
Before I arrived, yes.
And did you know him personally prior to this incident?
Just as much as he was the watch commander, nothing personal.
You didn't know anything about his experience in prior homicide cases?
Nothing, sir.
Did you know Officer Risky prior to your introduction to him in connection with this investigation?
Only as much as knowing that his name was Risky and who that name was attached to.
But you hadn't worked with him before?
No, I hadn't.
Okay. Now, I take it that when you arrived at the scene, you had quite a few questions as the initial detectives taking over the case.
Initially, I didn't say hardly anything. Detective Phillips took the lead talking to Sergeant Rossi.
Okay. Now, can you give me some idea of the breakout in responsibilities between you and Detective Phillips? Had you worked a prior homicide together?
Yes.
There are certain tasks that have to be looked after immediately after you get on the scene, correct?
Yes.
Do you fellas divide up these responsibilities, or does he just take control and direct you to do certain things?
No, there's a way we usually work together.
All right. Now, did you and Detective Phillips have any conversation whereby you allocated the work to be done at this particular scene?
No.
Well, do you know if it was contemplated that you'd work side by side or that you would go off in different directions?
Well, Detective Phillips was a homicide coordinator, so he would not be taking a lead role. It would be one of the other detectives that had been called in that had not yet arrived.
Okay. Now, what other detectives had been called in that you learned about when you got there?
Detective Roberts and Detective Nolan,
And what rank do they hold?
both Detective 1.
So that you, apart from Detective Phillips, would be the senior detective on site
Yes,
until
sir.
someone else arrived, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you say that since he's the homicide coordinator, I gather the thrust of that is that you had to do the footwork, so to speak.
Well, working with Detective Phillips, he usually conducts most of your administrative notifications.
Right.
He coordinates and he allows the detectives handling the case to work the case.
Which in this case was you, correct?
Yes, sir.
You were to do the detecting.
Yes.
All right. Now, what did you first address of the many things that you might have looked at when you arrived at the scene?
I'm not sure I understand if you're talking about the
Okay.
crime scene or,
All right. Well, there are certain things that need to be addressed whenever a homicide occurs, correct?
yes,
And you knew this both by virtue of your training, your experience as a patrolman, and 10 other homicide investigations, right?
yes,
All right. If the victims aren't quite dead, as sometimes is the case, that's priority number one, treatment and attention to the victims, right?
yes, sir.
You eliminated that possibility in your own mind rather quickly in this case, did you not?
Officer Risky informed us of the situation.
Okay. The protection of others who may be endangered because of the circumstances evident at the crime scene would be probably the next consideration, would it not?
Yes, sir.
You knew that children had been in the house and had been taken to the safety of the police station.
Yes.
Did you know whether they had been asked as to where other family members might be?
I had no knowledge of any
Did
question.
you make any effort to contact them and inquire?
Not at that time.
Okay. Preserving the integrity of the crime scene, a very, very important task, is it not?
Yes, sir.
You saw that yellow tape had been put up.
Yes.
What else had been done, to your knowledge, to preserve the integrity of the crime scene before you took over?
What I saw was the officers did a very good job in sealing off a very, very large area, considering that their only knowledge was that the crime scene involved one address or one residence. They sealed off a very large area and had uniformed personnel with their vehicles at different locations to keep that area secure and any unauthorized people from entering.
All right. What about the need to notify experts, criminalists, and others to come to the scene while the evidence is still fresh? Did that cross your mind at all that morning?
Yes, sir.
All right. And what, if anything, did you do about that?
I didn't have the case long enough to do anything about it.
Okay. Well, did you develop an interest soon after your arrival as to the time of death of each of the victims?
No.
Did not?
No.
Why was that?
I never got to the point to even give an opinion as a mode of death, and I would leave that to the coroner's investigator.
Okay. Well, you knew that they were dead by a little after midnight, didn't you, based on the information you were given?
I believe Officer Risky gave a general time, yes.
You were well satisfied by what Risky told you and what you saw with your own eyes, that Nicole Brown Simpson was indeed the female victim, weren't you?
I had no idea. I could not see her face. I could not, there was no identification. So at that time, I believe it was assumed, but not known.
There wasn't any question in anybody's mind at 2:10 a.m. that Nicole Brown Simpson was dead, was there?
I don't know that, sir.
Well, was there a question in your mind? Did you really wonder who she was at that point?
I didn't jump to any conclusions about what that scene offered.
My question is, did you know who she was, or were you wondering who she was?
I'd say wondering.
Okay. You couldn't see enough of her to recognize her from your prior encounter?
I wouldn't have recognized her, but identification,
You wouldn't have?
no, sir.
Okay. You knew that the pictures of Mr. Simpson were around the house?
I saw one, yes.
And did you see a list of phone numbers on the kitchen wall, which included that of O.J. Simpson?
No, I did not see that.
Did you see a telephone with a speed dial on it?
I believe I saw a telephone next to the kitchen area, but I didn't look at the phone, no.
Didn't examine it at all?
No.
Didn't notice that it had a speed dialer and an entry said Daddy?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Now, had you and Detective Phillips discussed at this point the manner in which Mr. Simpson would be notified?
No, I was not privileged to that.
All right. When did you first learn that special steps would be taken in this case?
I'm sorry, would you repeat
When did you first learn that special rules had been issued by the brass and the police department as to how Mr. Simpson would be notified?
that? Never.
You never heard that?
No.
You're learning today that Phillips was told, tell him personally and rather than over the telephone?
No, I thought you meant a special way that we were going to notify. That's desirable in any case. I only learned from Detective Phillips while we were in the vehicle that we were going up to the Rockingham address to make a notification.
But can you tell me when that was?
When we got into the vehicle to leave.
To go to Rockingham?
Yes, sir.
That was 5 o'clock in the morning or thereafter?
Yes, sir.
What's your best estimate?
About 5 o'clock.
Now, I wonder if you could help us, Detective Furman, and just give us your best recollection of your whereabouts at various times that are relevant to your experiences that morning, at least in the view of the defense. You received the call from Phillips at 1:05.
Yes, sir.
Can you estimate at what point you were actually on the road and headed for the station?
Usually takes me maybe 15, 20 minutes to get ready.
Okay, so somewhere between 1:15 and 1:25?
Yes, sir.
And I think you said around 20 minutes to drive in,
Yes.
and you arrived there around 1:50, 1:55?
Shortly before 2, yes.
And having arrived at the crime scene at 2:10, I would assume that you left the station around 2:05.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you can, please try to tell us what you were doing at 2:15, 5 minutes after you arrived at the crime scene.
I believe I was listening to either Sergeant Rossi or Officer Risky explain what they had discovered.
And where were you physically standing as you listened to this information?
Inside the yellow tape behind a police vehicle parked in the roadway.
How long did you spend at that location getting this information before you moved to somewhere else?
A few moments, just long enough to make a few statements about how the bodies were discovered.
Okay, well, a moment doesn't have a very concrete definition. Can you just give us in minutes?
A couple of minutes.
So is it fair to say that by 2:15 you were leaving the immediate crime scene and walking south on Dorothy?
I think that'd be rather quick. We tried to approach to the front of the residence, but then we turned around and then we went down towards Dorothy.
Would it be more fair to say between 2:15 and 2:25 you left the crime scene where you and Phillips and Risky had been looking at the bodies and walked back out to the sidewalk and south on Dorothy?
I think that's too much now.
Too much? Well, understand, you said 2:15 would be too soon, and my question now is, would it be between 2:15 and no later than 2:25?
I would be more comfortable with maybe no later than 20 after.
Okay, so by 2:20, you were on the move. Now, you described how you walked through the shrubbery, I believe you said from off the picture, as you were looking at a photograph of the scene, and could view the body of Nicole Brown Simpson, but did not have a very good view of the body of the other victim from that vantage point. Am I correctly summarizing what happened?
Yes.
All right. In order to attain a better perspective, you questioned Risky, as a result of which you walked down Bundy to Dorothy and around up the alley and into the Simpson home. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And out the front door, which you understood was found open by the officers first on the scene.
Yes.
Can you describe the lighting conditions that existed at the moment that you walked out that front door?
I believe there was light coming from the inside of the residence, cascading down onto the walkway.
Cascading down.
Yes.
Is that suggesting that the naked eye could see most of the detail in the crime scene without the aid of artificial illumination by virtue of that light?
No, there was a lot of shadowing. There was a lot of shrubbery. It wasn't very good light.
Well, did you have your little flashlight with you at that time?
Yes.
That's the little, is it black one?
Yes.
That holds two AA batteries.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and can be adjusted either for a spot or a flood?
Yes.
Then prior to the time that you walked around to the rear of the residence, the only place you had been is with the others in the shrubbery at the gate post, as you put it.
Yes, sir.
True?
Yes.
Okay. At what time would you say you entered the residence, assuming that you left at 2:20 from the immediate crime scene?
Within a minute?
You walked that distance in 1 minute?
Yes, just around the block.
Well, you're a fairly tall fella. Do you know the rate at which you normally walk?
No.
3.5, 4 miles an hour? Like most people?
I would suspect, yes.
Okay. Do you know the distance from the immediate crime scene around the back way into the house?
No.
Okay. Well, 3.5 miles an hour is 309 feet a minute, and 4 is 352. Do you think that the distance was less than that?
That seems pretty accurate, your first number.
Okay. So you think it was about 300 and some odd feet that you traversed to get to the house?
But that would be a great estimation on my part, but I think it's workable.
Okay. And that's about the distance you could walk in a minute. True?
If you say so.
Well, you're the walker. Do you say so?
I walk fairly rapidly, but
All right.
I don't know if it would make a difference.
When you entered the home, did you go directly out through the front door to view the bodies once again, or did you at that time begin to walk around and make observations?
No, I was led by Officer Risky.
The purpose in taking that route was to get back where you had started, but in a different place, right?
Yes, sir.
And to get there without walking through the pooling of blood that was around the area. That was
Yes.
your purpose, right?
Yes, sir.
How long would you say you spent at the crime scene from that vantage point up on the steps, I believe you told us, on that occasion?
Once Officer Risky brought us out into the landing, just long enough to point out a few items of evidence, show us the footprints, and then walk us back along the right side of those shoe prints.
Okay. Well, how long do you think you spent there?
A couple minutes,
Maybe only 2?
2-3 minutes.
Okay. And you made the observations you described for us on direct examination about Mr. Goldman, the other evidence that was lying around?
Officer Risky was pointing them out with his flashlight.
Okay. These are things he had discovered, and he was showing them to you. These were not things that you were discovering as a detective, right?
I was listening and he was pointing them out. Yes, sir.
Right.
That is correct.
But he already knew they were there. You fellows weren't making a discovery at that point, were you?
No, we were quiet listening to his lead.
And he told you that he had seen them there when he first came on the scene, a little after midnight.
Yes.
Now, after spending 2-3 minutes there, where did you go?
We walked down along the pathway that's on the north side of the residence, looked at the gate.
This where you saw the bloody footprints?
The bloody footprints were from the landing westbound.
Right. Now, you've described a path that goes down some steps, levels out, and goes up some steps and out the back gate, correct?
Yes.
Did I understand you to say that the last bloody footprint that you saw that night was on the concrete before you got down the first set of steps?
Oh,
Is that correct, Detective Furman?
Would you ask that
Yes.
one more time, please?
Have in mind that steps go up, there's a flat area going by the entrance to the home, steps go down, levels out again, steps go up, and then you go out the back gate. Have that scenario in mind. You remember
Yeah.
that now?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Is it correct that the bloody footprints that you saw did not extend beyond the first flat level?
I don't recall they did, no.
You have referred...
Right.
You have referred to the depressed area in the past as a trough of some sort, have you not?
Yes.
Okay. Now, my question is, did any footprints go down the steps or into the trough that you saw that night?
I didn't see any.
Okay. Have you had some training in footprints?
Shoe prints? Or footprints?
Footprints? Have you had some classes, some on-the-job training, or anything that would educate you as to the kinds of footprints that can be found at a crime scene and how they can be isolated and preserved?
Yes,
You have.
yes.
Can you tell me when and where you obtained that training?
In detective school, homicide school.
That was a formal class where somebody lectured to you?
I think it was included in a criminalist's ability at conducting some investigations, it
One of the
seems.
things criminalists can do.
Yes.
Now, do you know the difference between a footprint and a foot imprint?
I'd say one would be dimensional, have some character of width or depth and height.
Width or depth?
Width, depth, and height would be something to be imprinted in a
You mean
in something.
three-dimensional as against two?
Three-dimensional.
Hold on. Mr. Bailey, would you allow the witness to finish the answer before you start
Yes,
answering? Thank you.
Complete your.
I would say an imprint would be, yes, three-dimensional.
An imprint is the kind of footprint that you might find in soil, sand, or snow, right?
Yes,
A footprint on a hard surface would be two-dimensional, if it existed, would it not?
yes,
It could be outlined in blood or grease or any substance that could be seen, correct?
yes,
Or it could be latent, could it not?
yes.
You know what a latent footprint is?
It would be something that's not visible to the naked eye.
Okay. So that if there were any latent footprints that were on that walkway that night, that's something that only the criminalist could likely pick up, correct?
Yes,
In other words, if there had been two people, one stepped in blood and the other didn't, there might be some latent footprints around to be detected by somebody properly trained. Fair statement?
I'm not sure if it'd be a fair statement.
Don't think so.
I'm a little confused at the question.
Oh, all right. Well, let me see if I can clarify it somewhat for you.
Thank you.
If a latent footprint, shoe print, is one that cannot be seen with the naked eye, but must nonetheless be protected, you can only protect the area where it might be, correct? Not a specific spot in that area.
I understand what you're saying. Yes,
Oh.
sir.
And a criminalist might later come along and either with ultraviolet light or an oblique light find some shoe print in the dust that you hadn't been able to see for lack of training and experience, true?
Yes, sir.
All right. And my question is whether the crime scene that you were walking on as you went back up that walkway with Officer Risky was being protected in that fashion.
I believe the whole scene was being protected, yes.
Okay. But how did you get from the front to the back?
Well, we had to get there some way.
And so you walked,
We walked at the best path that we could determine at that time.
being careful to avoid the bloody footprints and what you thought might be drops of blood nearby,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, after you arrived at the back gate, what time would you say it was then, as you arrived?
I don't know what the timeline would be at that point. It would probably take us a couple more minutes to walk back and make the observations on the gate.
Just give us your best estimate of what time it was when you got to the back gate.
I have no idea.
Would it be before 2:30 or after?
I don't know,
This is
sir.
20 minutes into your investigation.
I don't know.
Okay.
I would probably say a little before,
A little before.
yes.
What did you next do?
Walked out into the driveway. Officer Risky pointed out blood drops and some change.
Yeah.
Then I re-entered the house.
All right. Now, before you re-entered the house, did you or had you begun to develop a picture of this crime scene and to have some ideas as to what might be relevant and what might not in the course of the investigation you were about to conduct?
Well,
Did you have an
somewhat,
overview?
a slight overview.
Risky had been doing his best prior to your arrival to do the things he'd been trained to do, correct?
Yes,
And those are the kinds of things that you were trained to do when you were a patrolman at homicide scenes as opposed to a detective,
yes.
all right? Had any canvassing of the neighborhood taken place that you know of?
I believe there had been, yes.
And as I recall from your notes, you said the residents wouldn't open the doors, so nobody learned much.
Well, I think that was an impression of Officer Risky. I don't know if that was accurate.
But somebody told you that.
Yes,
Did you inquire about whether the crime scene had been searched and its surround for any evidence of weapons, clothing, or other implements of crime?
No.
Risky didn't tell you that the area had been looked at, garbage cans, dumpsters, and so forth?
I don't recall him making any comment, no.
Do you recall directing anyone to accomplish that purpose?
No.
All right. Now, would you agree that when there is delay in a homicide investigation, number one, the perpetrators or perpetrator, as the case may be, have a chance to get further and further away from the scene, correct?
Well, I think that would be common sense, yes.
They have the opportunity perhaps to plant evidence to mislead the detectives as time goes by.
I couldn't answer that, sir.
They have time. This is no part of your training, I take it.
Planning evidence? No, it isn't.
And they have time to structure false alibis all during this period that they are not being apprehended.
I would probably agree with that.
And they are free to kill again. True?
If that's the circumstance.
Well, if they're not apprehended, presumably they have the same freedom that permitted them to accomplish the grisly scene that you had just viewed. True?
I can't,
Overruled.
I couldn't speculate on a criminal's intent, whether he killed once or 100.
Well, it seemed to me that a little later that day you were speculating pretty heavily on people's safety and intent, were you not? About
Safety.
5 that morning when you went over the wall, wasn't that because of a concern for safety?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Ms. Clark. All right, sustain. Proceed.
Okay. All right, when did you go into the house, as best you can recall, to make your notes?
Right after Officer Risky led us past the driveway into the alleyway.
Did you give any direction to any of the officers at the scene prior to sitting down to make the notes that we've all viewed, as to things they ought to do or ought not to do?
No, I was satisfied with the crime scene, the security of it.
All right. Now, as you understood it, when you and Detective Phillips walked up to that post, what were the rules in force about people going to the crime scene, the area where you were standing?
I'm not sure I understand the rules.
Which people, if any, were allowed to go inside the yellow tape of those who were present when you arrived at 2:10 a.m.?
I would say at that point, concerned detectives, as far as approaching the scene.
Just detectives?
As far as approaching the scene?
Right.
That would be my
All right.
assumption at that point.
Did you issue any orders as to who could and could not cross that tape?
No.
When did you first realize Detective Roberts had arrived?
When he entered the rear of the residence and came into the kitchen area.
And what time was that?
Shortly before this case was relieved from our responsibility.
All right. Now, you have mentioned that event a number of occasions. Can you tell us, according to your best recollection, when it was that Detective Phillips said, robbery homicide is taking over this case?
Within a half hour or 40 minutes of our arrival.
Okay. Well, would the figure 38 minutes after you arrived seem to be about correct?
I've never read that, but I agree with it.
Okay. So that if you got there at 2:10, then about 2:50 or thereabouts, you learned that this case was no longer yours to lead, correct?
Yes.
You were in the process of writing your notes about 10 minutes of 3 when you got this information, as I understand it.
Yes, sir.
And did you cease writing your notes at that point because you had been relieved or because you learned you'd been relieved?
I completed the notes when Detective Phillips told me that we were relieved of this. I completed the notes that I had started.
How many notes did you write after you got the information?
Oh, there was only 2 or 3 points that I wanted to put on the notes that were of concern.
But you did that subsequently.
I believe when he was standing right there.
Okay. Now, on another subject, just briefly, my understanding is that you were instructed by someone last fall to watch the Larry King show.
No, that was
that
this
on
year.
direct?
That was this year, sir.
Last fall? Oh, no, it was this year.
Yes.
I'm sorry. When was it?
Sometime this year, I think within the last month.
And why were you instructed to watch that show, if you know?
The DA's office wanted me to look at a Miss Kathleen Bell and see if I recognized her.
Okay. Now, had you seen her earlier on any other show?
No.
You had not seen a show called Dateline?
No.
You did not see your lawyer on that show?
No.
Okay. Do you know of a Marine recruiting station down in your neighborhood?
Yes, I do.
Had you been there in 1986?
I believe I was in the recruiting office 2 or 3 times about that time, yes.
Did you in fact make application to re-enter the Marine Corps?
No, I didn't.
Did you fill out any papers at any time during any of your visits down there?
No, I don't believe I did, no.
Did you meet a sergeant named Joe Foss?
Yes, I did.
As a Marine, is that a significant name to you?
Yes, I believe it was either his, I believe it was his grandfather was a famous aviator.
The greatest ace the Marine Corps has ever produced, was he not?
Yes, sir.
Joe Foss of North Dakota?
Yes, sir.
Now, how many times did you make the acquaintance of Mr. Foss in that station? Or in the same general area?
2 or 3.
And did Mr. Foss ever introduce you to a blonde lady?
I don't recall being introduced, no.
Well, when you say you don't recall, does that mean it may have happened, but you can't now dredge up any recollection of the event, or you're pretty certain it never happened? Which do you mean by that?
What I'm certain is that I didn't meet Kathleen Bell at that location.
Okay. Now, in order to determine that, you are relying on her image being shown on a television show while she was being interviewed. Correct?
That and her name.
Well, let's separate this. You say you're sure you never met a woman named Kathleen Bell.
Yes, sir.
You have to answer for the record.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever meet a woman that looks like the lady on the Larry King show by some other name?
No.
In looking at that face, how long did you watch the show that night?
About 5 minutes.
Was that enough to satisfy you that you had never seen this woman before?
I did not recognize her.
No, that wasn't my question. Were you satisfied after 5 minutes, and I take it you discontinued viewing the show, that the woman being interviewed by Larry King and identifying herself as Kathleen Bell was someone you had never met?
That's correct.
Okay. Is it not true that you would have recollected such a person if you had met them under the circumstances she described, without going into what they were?
Yes, I would.
That kind of thing would impress your memory the same way the meeting of O.J. Simpson would it not?
I don't think in the same way, but similar, yes.
Well, what she was discussing was fairly outrageous conduct, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you had engaged in that conduct with the woman whose image you were looking at, that's not something you would soon forget, is it?
No.
Okay.
You may.
Detective Furman, would you take a look at this photograph of a blonde woman and tell me whether or not that is the person that was being interviewed by Larry King when you watched the show at the request of the prosecution?
Yes.
Yes. Next in order.
1053. Is that a custom in Florida? Never mind. Proceed. Deputy Jester's supposed to shoot them when they do that. Proceed.
If I may say so, Your Honor, the configuration is one that I am not familiar with, so if I have stepped in the wrong area, I am well advised.
Thank you. Proceed.
All right. May I exhibit the photo? Would you put it up, please? Detective Furman, for the record, is this the same photograph that I showed you a moment ago at the witness stand?
Yes, it is.
And do you have no recollection of Joe Foss being in your company and hers in the recruiting station in 1986 or thereabouts,
I do not.
or at any time in your life?
I do not.
So that if he were to say that he did in fact introduce the two of you, you say that can't be true. True?
If he said that, I do not recall ever meeting this woman in the recruiting station or anywhere else.
All right. Well, I'm trying to get the distinction between a lack of recollection, a faded memory, and an absolute certainty that you have never seen this woman before until you saw her on television. Which is it?
I do not recognize this woman as anybody I have ever met.
All right. You testified on direct examination that not only did you not know this woman and had never met her, but you had never said the things that were displayed on the Elmo in her letter. True?
Yes, sir.
All right. And is it fair to say there can be no mistake in your mind about your testimony in this part?
That's correct.
All right. Now, do you know a woman named Andrea Terry?
No, I do not.
Did you ever meet a woman standing 6 feet 1 inch named Andrea Terry in a bar down near where you live?
No, sir.
Is there a bar down in that area that you frequent?
No longer, but yes, there is.
Back in '85.
Yes, sir.
What was the name of it?
Hennessy's Tavern?
Hennessy's Tavern. Now, I ask you whether or not, on an occasion in the middle '80s, related in time to your going to the Marine recruiting station for whatever purpose, you met with a woman named Andrea Terry and Kathleen Bell, an independent and second occasion.
No.
Have you been shown any photographs of Andrea Terry by anyone?
No, I have not.
Did you spend a little time discussing her with the prosecution this weekend?
It was mentioned, but I said I don't know this woman.
Tell me about the mention. Where were you and who you talking?
It was just asked, excuse me, on the
Where
first
were
part-
you and who were you talking with and the subject came up?
in this building.
Talking to Ms. Clark or one of her associates? Is this before or after you went and found out about the standard equipment for the Bronco?
No, that was at my residence.
Okay. Did you do that on your own or did someone ask you to do it?
No, someone that knew somebody called and said, that's what that bag is.
But a lot of phone calls came in about that, didn't they?
Not to my knowledge, one.
Oh, okay. In any event, were you asked whether or not a woman named Andrea Terry had ever met you in Hennessy's Tavern, with or without Kathleen Bell?
I've never heard the last name, but the first name I did hear.
Okay. Does the first name mean anything to you?
No.
Are you as satisfied that you did not meet Kathleen Bell with another woman in Hennessy's as you are that you did not meet Kathleen Bell in the recruiting station?
Yes.
So that if an Andrea Terry were to testify that she was with you in Hennessy's Tavern in 1986 with Kathleen Bell and heard remarks such as the one we've seen, you would say that is a fabrication, Detective Furman?
I don't know why she'd do it, but yes, I would.
No question about it.
No question
Now,
about
have
it.
you ever done anything, to your knowledge, to hurt or otherwise offend anyone in the Bell family, assuming that there is one?
I have no idea, sir.
Ever had any contact with any relative or possible relative of Kathleen Bell in your capacity as a policeman?
I would have no way of knowing that the name is Bell does not ring a...
The name Bell doesn't ring a bell. Is that
Yes,
what
sir.
you were trying to say?
Yes.
Okay. And what does the name Terry ring, or Andrea?
Nothing.
Okay. So, under these circumstances, the statement of Mr. Foss that he made one introduction and the statement of Ms. Terry that she was in a meeting with the two of you, or an encounter, would both be incorrect. All right?
What was the last of that question, sir?
Let me break them up. We've already heard from you that Mr. Foss would be seriously in error if he said he introduced you to the woman whose picture was on the album.
Yes.
It never happened. True.
Kathleen Bell, no.
Okay. And you never met her in Hennessy's Tavern.
No,
on any occasion or under any circumstances or with any other person?
no,
And you have no image in mind of a tall, attractive woman named Andrea with whom you talked in Hennessy's Tavern in 1986?
none at all.
None whatsoever.
No.
Now, Detective Furman, are you as satisfied with the quality of the truth of your denial of knowing Kathleen Bell as you are of your claim that you found the right-handed glove on Mr. Simpson's property? Is the quality of the truth of those two statements the same, or is one stronger than the other, if you know?
I don't understand any of that.
You don't understand that question.
No.
Are you as certain that you have never met Kathleen Bell on any occasion as you are that you in fact found the right-hand leather glove we've been discussing on Mr. Simpson's property?
Mr. Clark, I can barely hear you. Is that
I go on
objection what?
objection that states the testimony.
All right. Overruled on that ground. Proceed.
Objection made.
Sustained.
Can you tell us why you were at the recruiting station and on what days?
On what day, I cannot.
How many occasions?
2 or 3.
And what was your purpose in going there?
I asked Sergeant Foss if there was any good reserve units that were, they had any openings.
And how many times did you do that?
Well, I found that there wasn't really any movement in the reserve units at that time, but I enjoyed talking to Sergeant Foss, so I returned for a few other times.
Did you meet anyone else while you were there?
A Mr. Rohr or Sergeant Rohr,
Sergeant Rohr. Ron Rohr?
I believe. I don't remember his first name.
And how many times did you meet him?
I think he was there every time.
And did you talk with him about possibly enrolling in a reserve unit?
No. I think he might have overheard my purpose, but that was dropped fairly quickly.
Foss was the main source of information?
Yes.
And how many times did you see Sergeant Rohr?
A couple of times.
Did you see a Marine while you were there on any of these occasions named Max Cordova?
I believe I saw a Marine that I later found out was him. I didn't remember his name.
Did you speak to him at all?
I remember him kind of in the background of the recruiting office doing some tasks.
Do you remember an occasion when he pointed out to you Sergeant Rohr, who was then coming across the street?
I don't remember that now.
Have no recollection of such an event?
No.
How long were you in the company of Max Cordova? Do you know his rank, by the way?
No, I don't.
PFC, Corporal, Sergeant?
I don't know, sir.
Was he in uniform?
I believe so, yes.
Were all of these people in uniform whenever you saw them on the 3 occasions that you went to the station?
Yes.
And how long would you stay on the first, second, and third occasions, if you can tell us individually?
Long enough to have a cup of coffee. 15, 20 minutes.
Did you ever have any conversation with any of these 3 men outside the station?
I think one time Joe Foss wanted to look at my car, my truck, and we walked out.
Okay, and did you take him out to look at it?
I think I was leaving at that time when we went out.
And did you meet any other people out in the parking lot that you can remember?
No.
Did you know when you were there in 1986 that Kathleen Bell worked upstairs directly over the recruiting station in a real estate office?
I was told that a female that came in there at one time worked in the Century 21.
Mm-hmm. But that female you saw, did you see a female?
Yes, I saw a female come in there at one time.
All right, and that was someone other than Ms. Bell?
I don't know. I didn't pay much attention to whoever came in there.
Are you now saying, sir, that if you've ever seen Kathleen Bell, you didn't recognize her, but she may have walked through that place without your knowledge? Is that your present posture?
Well, she could have.
She could have.
She could have walked through
Describe the woman you did see.
that. I couldn't.
Blonde, brunette, redhead,
I couldn't, sir.
tall, short, stout, slim?
I paid almost no attention. I saw a female walk in like she knew people in the office, and I continued my conversation with Mr. Foss.
Well, without that information, how did you know it was a female?
Well, I could tell it was a female, sir.
You
But I
looked
didn't pay
at
any-
least that closely.
Well, I could tell she was a female.
Okay. And you can
Excuse me?
tell that Miss Bell is a female, can't you?
Yes.
From seeing her on Larry King. Are you quite sure that they are not one and the same, the female you saw and the woman on the Elmo?
Am I sure?
Are you sure?
I'm not
Detective
sure.
Furman? You're not.
I just do not know Miss Bell.
So you may have seen Miss Bell, and you're now unable to recollect that. Is that so?
No, I didn't pay any attention to the female that came into the recruiting office.
Please listen to the question. You may have been in the same room with Miss Bell, but you don't now recognize her. Is that the way you want to leave it?
Sustained.
It's good break time, huh?
It is.
Ruling?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the morning session. Please remember my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. Do not allow anybody to approach you or communicate with you with regard to the case. Detective Furman, you're excused until 1:30.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we'll stand in recess 1:30.